Hi, I'm Bob Alsop with ShopSabre CNC. Around here they call me RouterBob. We just got back from a very successful trade show in Las Vegas, Nevada. It was AWFS 2017. It was really great to meet a lot of our customers out there and a lot of the people that came by that watch our videos. And I kept getting asked the same questions over and over. So I thought, let's do a video where we basically answer the common questions that we get asked all the time. I hope you enjoy this. You know, a common question I get is, where did the name RouterBob come from? Well, when I first got into the CNC router business, and that would have been in the mid-90s, I worked for a company in Sauk Rapids, Minnesota, which was an American manufacturer of CNC routers called Como Machine. And back then, the internet was totally different than it is now. Pretty much people had internet through a company called America Online, or AOL, and we had dial-up. So you had a modem in your computer and you plugged it to a phone line. That's how we actually got connected. And so I had to set up an account and create an email address. Well, I really wanted to be Como Bob, but it was already taken, so I selected RouterBob. So my first email address was routerbob@aol.com. And through time, people just got to know me by RouterBob, and as I went from different careers in different industries, I always kept RouterBob, and I still have that account today. So that's where the whole story of RouterBob starts. Another question I got asked a lot at the show had to do with some previous videos I'd done for several years ago, where I really talked a lot positively about rack and pinions. Yet now they see the new videos we do at ShopSabre CNC, and it's almost always about ball screws. So they say, you know, what's happened? Well, you have to really understand how the industry's evolved. First off, when I first started in the CNC business, machines cost more than a customer's house did typically. And often it was the largest purchase they'd ever made. Well, you move forward and you see the Chinese influence in the industry here. And all of a sudden, for about the price of a pickup truck, you could buy a CNC machine. And they pretty much all had rack and pinions, and they produced parts at the time that were satisfactory until you got into the real high precision stuff. So even though maybe the parts weren't as good as what we can produce now, they were adequate. Well, time moves on, and a couple things have happened. One is the requirement to produce higher accuracy parts is there now. When you start cutting MDF doors, when you start cutting aluminum plastic, the play that's inherent in rack and pinion shows up. And we know all about that technology because we sell lower end machines with that, so we're quite familiar with that. The only way you get rid of that is to get rid of the play, and the way you do that's with ball screws. So that's why you see at ShopSabre CNC, our machines, or the higher end machines, are all ball screw drives, because that gives us the ability to produce those more accurate parts that your customers are asking for. I hope that answers that question. You know, a customer at the show asked me to elaborate on the concept of machine tool grade CNC router. Well, that actually came for me for the old days, and when I first got in the CNC business, the company had actually built metalwork machine tools before getting into the CNC router business. And so the designs in the routers reflected that history. You know, you saw really robust structural steel components for the frame. You saw really nice ball screws. You saw really good technology in drives and control stuff. So when we developed the ShopSabre higher end series, the Pros and the ISs, we really wanted those designs to reflect that philosophy from early on. And I call that a machine tool grade router. And of course we use finite element analysis to help us do the engineering, and we use really, really good components. So I think when you look at a machine tool grade router, I think the expectation is that it has the inherent design built into it to do precision parts, whether they be MDF doors, whether they be aluminum or plastic. And I think you see that philosophy. So when you hear me talk about machine tool grade router, that's where that's coming from. You know, a general question we get asked about trade shows is, how do you make the determination of what you want to display in the booth? And there's a little background to this. You know, I've been in the CNC business a long time and in software, and when I turned 65, I decided it was time to retire, and so I did. And I played all summer, and then at the end of the summer, people were asking about videos, and I thought, you know, maybe I'll continue doing RouterBob CNC videos. About the same time, ShopSabre CNC also wanted to add a video component to their marketing system. And so I came up and visited them, and the first thing I noticed is I felt really comfortable sitting around the conference table talking to them. I think that was probably a good sign. And they took me out in the shop, and I looked at the machines, and it absolutely blew me away. I had no idea how good they were. I looked at the ball screws, I looked at the welds, all the little details that you look at to really determine how good a machine is. They had it all. And I got to thinking, well, if that impressed me that much, that's going to impress somebody that walks up to a trade show booth also. Because you really can't tell from the videos or from the literature how good that is. And so that's really what drove what we took. So then we had two pieces of technology in the booth. One was the Pro Series 4x8, and the other was the IS Series 4x8 that had a boring block. So basically two machines to make the same part if you wanted to, all right? One was the price of a standard pickup truck. The other was the price of a loaded pickup truck, all right? So what we decided to run on them was we started out with a base cabinet, and I used the standard base cabinet that we use when we set up Mosaic or one of the other cabinet softwares to test the setup. And it's a base cabinet with all the joints, and you cut it out and you put it together and see if it fits. So I took that program and I ran it on the Pro Series. I took the exact same G-code program with no changes to feed rates and ran it on the IS. And the IS was about 15% faster. All right? So that means at the end of the day, the stack of parts that you basically cut would be 15% taller. And that probably justified the difference in price alone, nothing else. I said, now the IS is faster. What you actually saw was the larger drive motors. When you see the speed difference, it's that. Now, I can also, with the IS, because it's more powerful, I can also cut faster. So now, when I change the feed rates to what the machine would actually do, all of a sudden, that stack of parts got a lot bigger. So at the end of the day, the stack of parts is about a third more. So it's pretty easy to see the value that you're getting by a relatively small difference in price. So that's why we selected that actual application for the booth. Another topic that came up at the show had to do with the boring block that we had mounted on the IS Series machine. Customer came up and they said, well, how do I know if the boring block makes sense for my application? Well, it's not as simple as you might think. For one thing, when we look at the difference in cost between a Pro Series and an IS, the speed alone makes up the difference. And when you add the ability to machine faster, then it's a no-brainer. Boring block's not quite so clean. Well, let's think about what do you use one for? Well, if I'm doing a standard base cabinet, it has an adjustable shelf, and typically the adjustable shelf is going to have 5 holes. It could be more or less, but typically 5. And so what happens is with the regular router, without the boring block, I put a drill bit in the router head and it drills 5 holes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. With the boring block, I can actually bring 5 drills down at the same time and do that in one pass. But it's not 5 times faster, because I can actually drill faster with a router head because I have a little bit of limitation on speed based on actually air pressure holds the drills down, and if I go too fast, there's a little cushion there that affects depth of the cut sometimes. So it's not that much faster. Now, so if all you're doing is kitchen cabinets, standard stuff, the boring block probably doesn't make sense. But let's say you start doing closets. In fact, if you looked at one of the demonstrations we did on the IS, it was a closet nest, and it actually came out of Mosaic. Now, when you get into closets, you have a lot more line boring, so you have a lot more holes. So basically, now, all of a sudden, the boring block makes sense because 5, 5, 5, 5. So I guess the answer to the question is what you really need to decide is are closets part of your business or similar things that require a lot of line boring? If that's the case, the boring block makes sense. Now, if it's not the case, then it probably doesn't. But with ShopSabre, because our machines are expandable, you can actually add the boring block after the fact. So maybe you start out doing cabinets or casework and you get into the closets or some other application that requires a lot of holes, then you can add the boring block after the fact. Our machine frames are designed to accommodate for that. I hope that answers that question. The final thing I want to talk about is what I call the nickel test. Now, a competitor came up and said, what's that nickel sitting on the machine table for? Well, think about what we're trying to do in the booth. We're trying to really show the technology in the machine. So we had the machines moving around, and we were actually running programs, and so and you could see them side by side. You could see one was appreciably faster, but both machines had nickels sitting on the front edge of the table, and that's what I call the nickel test. Now, think what's happening when the machines move around. It's accelerating, it's stopping, it's going into the corner, it's coming back out, and all those moves, those nickels sit there. They never moved, they never fell, and they'd sit there all day long. What does that mean? That shows you how good our engineering is. In these videos I talk about, how we use finite element analysis, and I talk about the structural steel and all the design things and the drive systems. Well, that all comes together into a piece of technology that has that kind of performance. I doubt that there's another machine in the show that would do that. And we put that nickel on there just to show people when they walked up how good this is. And that's really the final test of all your technology and design. And I call that the nickel test. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. I wanted to take some of the experience and the questions that we had at the trade show and put them in a video. So even if you weren't able to attend the show, you could experience that. I think when you look at all this, the conclusion you draw is how good American CNC technology really is and how good ShopSabre CNC specifically is. If you have any questions, you can contact us at shopsabre.com. Thank you for watching.